A couple of years ago, when I first installed my Furrion camera, the RV manufacturer actually wired the power for the camera up to that little puck light right there. And the camera stayed on all the time, which I didn't like. And in my view, it's not so much a battery drain, but I'm convinced that it puts extra wear and tear on the camera if you leave it on all the time. And if you leave it on for 12 months a year and only use it, a few times a year, it doesn't really seem like you should. So at that time, I wired a switch in behind this cabinet up in the ceiling. And that switch turns the camera on and off. And that works okay, except that it seems like I'm always forgetting to turn the camera on and off until after I get the slide out in. So I have to pull one of the slide outs out just to turn the camera on or off. And that's been kind of a pain lately. So I want to see if I can come up with a better solution. And I've come up with a couple different alternatives that I'm going to try. And one option that works very well, what a lot of people do, is they wire their camera directly into one of the clearance lights. Because you can see you have plenty of room to get wire in there. And that way, when you turn the lights on your vehicle, the camera turns on. And I'll admit, these alternatives maybe are a little bit out there, but maybe not. Now this first one is built on a switch plate that replaces the existing switch plate. Has an on-off switch, which you may think kind of defeats the purpose. However, this is a long-term on-off switch, and basically you'll only want to turn it off when you're putting the RV in storage. And like many of the other circuits that I'm building for the RV, I am putting a transient voltage suppressor diode in it, and then this just tells you if the diode is working or not. And then on the back side, we just have the guts of one of those little inexpensive 433 megahertz relays. And then of course we have the transient voltage suppressor added on there. And this is just built on a circuit board, and that is controlled by one of these type of remotes. So I push A, I can turn the camera on, I push B, it'll turn the camera off. That's a pretty good solution. And the second solution I came up with is, of course it looks the same, except on the back side it's different. And this is an AT85 microcontroller, which I use quite a few of. And the way this module works is it looks for a 12-volt signal, and it's just a momentary signal. So the way this would work is you'd wire this into your brake lights. And every time the brake lights come on, this will sense it and turn the camera on. And then we have a programming switch here, and we can select 1 hour, 2 hours, or 4 hours. So what that means is once it senses the brake, it'll turn the camera on for an hour, or it'll turn the camera on 2 hours or 4 hours. And every time it senses the brake, it will reset that clock. This will stay on for 1 hour after it sees the last brake signal. And you can use anything besides the brake signal. I mean, I'm just using the brake signal because that is something that's active as you're going down the road. And the only issue with this is you may have a hard time wiring up the brake lights because, the way the RVs are built, you got to figure some way to fish a wire to the brake signal from here. But hey, it works, and it works pretty cool. Now this is a low side switch, however, camera is wired directly to here, so that's not a big problem. Now another thing you could use this for, you can turn it into a motion alarm. So you could hide this inside your RV somewhere, hook it up to a klaxon or some kind of a annunciator, bullhorn or something, and if somebody were to drive off or attempt to drive off with your trailer and they hook their lights up, and the first time they turn the brake light on, this is going to start howling, and if you have it set for 4 hours, it's going to run for at least 4 hours. So the secondary purpose of this could be for an alarm. Now this one, you could call this kind of silly, you could call this kind of over the top, but this is a magnetometer. So this little guy will turn on after it senses a change in direction. And since the magnetometer is here, we don't have to wire it into a brake circuit like the other one, but otherwise it works about the same. It has a variable time delay, but in this one it's on a potentiometer, and the reason I did a potentiometer here is, again, I'm dealing with these AT85s, and I've only got so many pins. There's a jumper here that you can do X-axis, Y-axis, or Z-axis, and I've road tested this in my truck. I've just hooked it up and drove down the road, and every time I turn a corner, this light comes on. And so I know it's working. And again, if you set this to, say, an hour, then it will stay in an hour after the last time it detects you make any turn. And this is a sensitivity adjustment because otherwise, you don't want this thing to turn on when you're walking in and out of the trailer, vibrating the floor and things, so you can adjust the sensitivity. And I have it adjusted now that it requires about a 90-degree turn before this comes on, and that's sufficient. Again, probably a little over the top, but hey, you could use this for a burglar alarm as well. So these are 3 different options along with the first option I discussed. And now if you're interested in building one of these, of course, on my website I will have all the information where you can get the circuit boards, where you can get the parts list. If you've looked at any of my other projects, you'll know what I'm talking about. We're going to try these. I got a trip coming up here pretty soon, and I'm going to install one of them on the way out, and then I'm going to install the other one on the way back. The one I'm not going to use, at least for now, is this one, which is the one that senses the brake. I would have to run a wire to the brake light on the tail lights. And now, sooner or later, it's bound to happen. I messed up. I don't have enough depth in here. When I measured, you can see it goes all the way up. So I have this much room to put the switch in. But if I go to the front side and go in, it's only that deep, and that's not enough. So yeah, even the best of us mess up every once in a while. And so to correct that problem, I found a surface mount box with the mounting base. This base mounts to where the hole is. This fits over and snaps on it. And then this goes in to the box and screws on to the box itself. And I'll paint these black, but for now I'm leaving them white so they show up better in the camera. And you can see here we have the puck light, and if you pull enough wiring through, you'll get to this black wire, which is connected to the hutch circuit. This black wire is what's pre-installed by the factory for the camera. So we've rewired the hutch circuit to one of these pair, and then the other pair, this one goes to the camera. So now we have the relay module just plugged in, and we'll turn it on, and I'll use my remote, and then there's on, and there's off. So now let's go outside, and when we turn this on, we should see that blue light come on. So right there's the blue light, off, on. So now we got the camera turned on and off with a wireless remote. And now the magnetometer version, the magnetic compass, this will be a little bit different way to test it. So we're going to turn it on, and if I turn it, now the light's on, the camera should be on outside. And then if you're wondering, if I plug these two directly together, yes, the camera would come on. So one is power and one is camera. We've got it installed, and it don't look too bad, especially if I paint it black. One other thing you can do to test this is when you turn it on, if you run some metal by the magnetometer, you can see that it'll turn on. We're going on a trip pretty soon, and we'll test this one on the way out. We'll test the one with the relay on the way back. Well, we've got the trailer hitched up to the tow vehicle, and I turned the camera switch on, which means that the camera is ready to respond to any change in direction. So the camera itself is not on yet, as we can see here. And we're going to turn a 90-degree angle. Okay, look at that. The magnetometer sensed a 90-degree turn and turned the camera on. So we'll see if this camera stays on the entire way. We've got about an 85-mile trip on freeways mostly, or at least half the way on freeways. So, we're going to have some straight shots, so we'll see if an hour is long enough, because remember, this thing will not turn off until an hour after its last sense of direction. And we've been at our campsite for about 20 minutes, and the light's still on, so we'll come back and check in about an hour and see if it goes off. And when I come back to check an hour or so later, the LED is off, meaning that the camera turned off. And now we swapped the magnetic compass version for the relay version, and I have the remote here. I'm going to turn it on now. Okay. So I'd say it's working. And after running the tests on both type switches, I'm equally surprised that they both worked well, especially the magnetic one. I was just flabbergasted how well that worked. So now I need to make a decision, which one do I want to use? Well, I was kind of leaning towards the magnetic switch. However, we got into a situation last weekend where I had to back up the RV to get out of the spot. And of course, when I'm backing up, if I don't turn a turn, the magnetic one is not going to come on. So then the advantage of the magnetic one is that it's an all-in-one solution and you don't have to worry about where you left the remote, versus situations such as when I had to back up and I could not turn the RV to turn the camera on.